I want you to just imagine something for a second here.
Correct.
Imagine you hear someone speak for exactly 10 seconds. Like, just 10 seconds.
There's barely a sentence or two.
Right. And you haven't even really processed the actual words they're saying yet. Your brain is still just, absorbing the raw acoustics.
The sound of it.
Yeah, the rhythm of their speech, the way they shape their vowels, the hard or soft edges of their consonants.
The underlying music of their voice, basically.
Exactly. And yet, before your conscious mind has even had a chance to, boot up and start paying attention to the conversation, a judgment has already formed.
It's already there.
You have already categorized this person, smart or not smart, educated or uneducated, trustworthy or suspicious, authoritative or, I don't know, uncertain.
And it happens entirely in the background, right? Like a silent, instantaneous sorting mechanism that you aren't even aware is running.
Yeah. And the most unsettling part of this is that you didn't invite that judgment.
No, not at all.
If you're listening to this, you're probably someone who prides themselves on being fair-minded. You didn't sit there, fold your arms, and consciously decide, I am now going to evaluate this stranger's intelligence based on 3 sentences.
Right, it just arrived.
It just arrived, the verdict was handed down automatically, and it came packaged with this absolute rock-solid confidence that, honestly, no 10 seconds of mere sound could ever logically justify.
I mean, it is the ultimate false confidence.
Yeah.
We walk through the world believing we're rational, objective evaluators of information, We think we listen to the substance of an argument.
We like to think we do anyway.
Exactly. But in those crucial first 10 seconds, our rationality has essentially been bypassed by our biology.
And that biological bypass is exactly what we are dissecting today. Welcome to our deep dive on accent bias.
It's such a massive topic.
It really is. It's arguably one of the most pervasive, heavily documented, and yet persistently denied forms of discrimination operating in modern society.
Absolutely.
So we're going to unpack the evolutionary biology behind it, pull apart the neuroscience to see the gears turning in your brain, and map out the severe real-world harm it causes across almost every sector of society.
And most importantly, we're going to look at how we can actually hack our own cognition to dismantle it.
Right. But before we take a single step further, we need to set a baseline.
Yes, a very clear baseline for you listening right now. Having this automatic reaction to an accent is not a character flaw.
Thank you.
It really isn't. It does not mean you are fundamentally broken or prejudiced. The data is overwhelming on this point. This is a deeply embedded universal feature of human social cognition.
It's everywhere.
It operates everywhere, across cultures, and it operates in almost everyone, including the people who will swear up and down and they are completely objective.
Oh, especially those people.
Right. So our goal today isn't to point fingers or induce guilt. We are here to understand the mechanics of the brain. Because, once you understand the machine, you stop letting it make your decisions for you.
So basically, we aren't putting anyone on trial here. We're just popping the hood to see why the engine is making a weird noise.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And if we're going to figure out why this bias hits us in 10 flat seconds, completely uninvited, we have to travel way back.
Way back to our ancestors.
Yeah. I mean, why would the human brain evolve to jump to such massive conclusions so incredibly quickly based solely on the sound of a voice?
Because at its absolute fundamental core, accent bias is an extension of the brain's original survival machinery.
The survival machinery.
Right, the in-group versus out-group radar. Our brains are designed to constantly, automatically, and unconsciously sort every single piece of sensory information into categories, especially people.
Us or them.
Us or them. Familiar or unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Safe or potentially threatening.
Okay, I get the safe versus threat thing when it comes to, seeing a tiger in the brush, but how does the way someone pronounces a vowel signify a threat?
Well, think about the ancestral environment. We lived in small, tightly knit groups. Right?
Yeah, hunter-gatherer stuff.
Exactly. In that world, accent was a literal, foolproof signal of group membership. If you encountered someone in the wild and they spoke with the exact same linguistic quirks, the same rhythm, the same vowel shifts as you, that was an undeniable marker.
It meant they were from your tribe.
Yes. It meant they were from your group. It meant you shared common experiences, you understood the same social rules, and you likely shared resources. That person was categorized instantly as a safe ally.
So, meaning if they sounded different, the opposite alarm bells went off.
Precisely. A different accent meant they were from another group. They were an outsider. And in a resource-scarce ancestral world, an outsider was an unknown variable, which meant they were a potential threat.
Wow.
So this automatic lightning-fast association of accent with group membership, combined with the hardwired instinct to favor your own group, just became deeply embedded in our cognitive architecture.
And it had to be fast?
It had to be immediate. You didn't have the luxury of sitting down for a cup of tea to rationally evaluate a stranger's moral character when you were trying to figure out if they belonged to a rival, hostile tribe.
Okay, so basically we're running iOS 1 on an iPhone 15 right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I mean, the threat detection software from our caveman days was a brilliant feature when we were trying to spot a rival in the dark. But it's a terrible destructive glitch when it's running in the background of a boardroom meeting.
Or a hospital intake room.
Or a classroom. The environment completely changed, but we forgot to update the threat detection protocol.
That is a phenomenal analogy. It is
Yeah.
outdated software. But, and this is so crucial, we need to make a very sharp distinction here. Otherwise, we risk falling into a trap.
What's the trap?
The trap of excusing it. Evolutionary origin explains why this bias is so persistent and hard to shake. It absolutely does not justify it.
Because just because something is natural doesn't mean it's good.
Exactly. The fact that a cognitive bias evolved for adaptive reasons, reasons that kept early humans alive, does not mean it produces just, accurate, or adaptive outcomes in a modern, complex, globalized world.
Right.
Understanding our biological wiring is the very first step in overcoming it. We don't get to throw our hands up and say, well, my caveman brain made me do it, so it's fine.
No, definitely not, but I'm stuck on the speed of this.
With 10 seconds.
Yeah. If it's happening unconsciously, before we even process the actual meaning of the words a person is saying, how is the brain physically tripping us up? What is happening in those first 10 seconds?
Okay, to see the trap, we have to look closely at the neuroscience of hearing, specifically how our brain processes speech.
Okay, lay it on me.
When you listen to someone talk, your brain is performing an extraordinarily complex real-time analysis. It's separating the signal of their voice from the background noise of the room.
Like tuning out the air conditioner.
Exactly. It's applying your specific language's grammatical rules. It's predicting the upcoming words based on context. And most fundamentally, it is parsing out individual phonemes.
Okay, let's pause there, because phonemes can sound a bit academic. How should we picture those?
Think of phonemes as the individual Lego bricks of sound.
Lego bricks. Okay.
Yeah, they are the smallest distinct units of sound in a language. The B sound in bat versus the P sound in pat.
Got it.
Your brain has to catch every single one of those flying Lego bricks, identify its shape, and snap it together with the others to build a word and then build a sentence.
Okay, so the brain is frantically catching and assembling these sound bricks, but it's doing something else at the exact same time, isn't it?
Yes, and this is the critical vulnerability. The brain doesn't just process the linguistic content, the actual words being built by the Lego bricks.
What else is it doing?
It simultaneously processes what we call paralinguistic information.
Meaning the information wrapped around the words?
Yes, the tone, the pitch, the emotional resonance, and heavily, the accent. Here is where the biological trap snaps shut.
Okay.
The brain processes those paralinguistic signals faster than it processes the complex linguistic content.
Wait, seriously, it registers how someone sounds before it registers what they are actually saying.
It does. It extracts the social and demographic data from the voice fractions of a second before the cognitive centers finish decoding the sentence's meaning.
That's wild.
It is. And that speed mismatch ruins our objectivity. Because the accent-based social assessment is formed first, it creates a perceptual frame.
Like a lens.
Exactly. That initial caveman brain judgment, this person is an outsider, or this person sounds uneducated, acts as an invisible filter through which every subsequent word is interpreted.
So it's confirmation bias, but on a subconscious neurological level.
It is the purest form of confirmation bias. The initial paralinguistic judgment creates a rock-solid expectation.
So if they say something smart.
Let's say the speaker with a heavy, unfamiliar accent says something incredibly insightful. Your brain doesn't neutrally analyze the brilliant statement and say, oh, I misjudged them, I'll update my assessment. This person is clearly a genius.
No, it defends its first guess.
It fiercely defends its first guess. It filters that intelligent observation through the prior expectation of incompetence. It might explain the intelligence away as a fluke, or assign it less significance, or simply fail to retain the information as clearly.
So the game is rigged.
The playing field is entirely tilted before the game even officially begins.
Wow. You know, there was this brilliant study done at the University of Chicago a few years back. I think it was 2010 by Shiri Lavari. and Boaz Kesar that completely exposed this mechanism.
Oh, yes. That study is fascinating.
They wanted to test how non-native accents physically alter our perception of truth. Not just our perception of the person, but our perception of objective facts.
It's a landmark study because of how cleanly it isolated the variable.
Right. So, picture this setup for a second. They took a group of volunteers and had them listen to a series of statements.
Just random statement.
Yeah, these weren't like political opinions or complex arguments. They were just obscure trivia facts. Things that were objectively true, but not common knowledge, like, I don't know, a giraffe's tongue is black, or ants don't sleep.
But the key was who was delivering the facts.
Exactly. They had these identical trivia statements read by different speakers. Some had native accents, some had mild non-native accents, and some had heavy non-native accents.
Okay.
And the participants were simply asked to rate how likely it was that the statement was true.
Just rate the truth of the fact.
Think about the insanity of that. They are the exact same facts. But the results were undeniable.
What do they find?
The participants rated the statements made by the heavier non-native speakers as less likely to be true. Let that sink in. The listener's brain decided that a fact was less factual simply because of the shape of the vowels of the person speaking it.
It's incredible. The content was held completely constant. The only variable was the accent, and yet it eroded the perceived reliability of the information itself.
To me, this is like trying to read a genuinely brilliant, groundbreaking scientific paper, but the whole thing is printed in a tiny, smudged, chaotic font.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. Your eyes are straining. It's difficult to get through. But instead of your brain realizing, hey, my eyes are just tired from squinting at this terrible font, your brain tricks you into thinking, this science is sloppy. The methodology is probably flawed.
You're confusing the delivery with the substance.
Yes, you confuse the mechanical difficulty of reading the text with the intellectual quality of the information.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the second major neurological mechanism we have to discuss today, which is cognitive load theory.
Cognitive load.
Right. When you are listening to someone speak with an unfamiliar accent, your brain fundamentally has to work harder. It requires significantly more cognitive processing power to decode the speech.
Because the Lego bricks look different.
Exactly. Going back to our Lego analogy, if someone has an accent you aren't used to, they might be using slightly different shaped bricks or putting the stress on a completely unexpected part of the word.
So the brain sort of stumbles.
Yes, your brain has to pause, resolve the ambiguity, and translate it in real time.
It's burning way more mental calories just to follow along.
It is exhausting for the brain. And this additional cognitive demand produces a subtle, often unconscious feeling of difficulty, which psychologists call disfluency.
Disfluency.
Right. And here is where the tragedy of your smudged font analogy becomes real. The listener misattributes that feeling of disfluency.
How so?
Well, instead of recognizing I am expending extra cognitive effort to decode these unfamiliar phonemes, the listener's brain says this person is hard to understand, therefore what they are saying lacks credibility or intelligence.
Wow.
The listener attributes the mechanical difficulty of processing the sound to a flaw in the speaker.
That is staggeringly unfair. I mean, the speaker is actively penalized because the listener's brain is out of shape and having to jog up a slight hill.
It is profoundly unfair. And when you scale that neurological glitch up to a societal level, it stops being just an interesting quirk of the brain. It becomes a systemic barrier.
Which brings us into the actual devastating toll this takes.
The real-world consequences.
Right. We've mapped out the biological glitch and the smudged font misfire in the brain.
Hmm.
But we can't leave this as some abstract theory debated in university linguistics departments. This invisible filter destroys livelihoods.
It really does.
It dictates who gets health care. It influences who goes to jail.
The data tracking this fallout is chillingly consistent across nearly every domain of public life.
Let's start with where people are most vulnerable, their income. Let's look at the hiring process, because you'd think in a professional environment with HR protocols and objective rubrics, this bias would be mitigated.
You hope so.
But the resume studies tell a completely different story.
They really do. In these studies, researchers present hiring managers or evaluators with identical qualifications, the exact same education, the exact same work history, the exact same specialized skills on paper.
Everything matches perfectly.
Exactly. But they pair those paper credentials with different audio profiles, usually a short introductory recording of the candidate.
So the paper's a perfect match. The only difference is the voice saying hello.
That's it, just a brief audio greeting.
Yeah.
And Consistently, overwhelmingly, the candidates speaking with non-native or non-prestige accents receive fewer requests for interviews,
Just based on the greeting.
just based on the sound of their voice.
Mm.
Furthermore, when asked to recommend a starting salary, the evaluators offer significantly lower compensation to the accented candidates, despite acknowledging the identical qualifications on the resume.
So on paper, you are a perfect fit. You've done everything society asked you to do. You got the degree, you built the
You
experience.
checked every box.
You check every box. But the moment you open your mouth to introduce yourself, your market value instantly plummets in the mind of the person holding the purse strings.
And this devaluation starts long before anyone enters the workforce. It is rampant in education.
Oh, the classroom studies.
Yes, we have extensive research tracking how teachers in American classrooms evaluate student work. They find that teachers assess students with non-native accents as less academically capable than their native-speaking peers.
Even for the exact same work.
Exactly. Even when the academic work being assessed is mathematically or historically identical.
See, that's the part that terrifies me. If a kid is taking a math test, math is universal. 2 plus 2 is 4, regardless of your accent. How is an accent dragging down a math grade?
It happens because the teacher isn't just grading the math. They're grading the student's perceived potential.
Ah, I see.
When a student explains their reasoning or participates in class, the accent triggers the cognitive load bias we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
The teacher experiences that disfluency, subconsciously assumes the student is struggling with the concept rather than just speaking with a different cadence, and adjusts their expectations downward.
And the really insidious detail here is that this happens even with educators who are completely well-intentioned.
Oh, almost always.
Right. A teacher can explicitly state they value diversity, they can genuinely believe they are grading an essay purely on its academic merit, but that invisible 10-second biological filter is dragging the grade down without them ever realizing it.
The unconscious nature of it is what makes it so difficult to root out. You can't fight an enemy you don't know is there.
Exactly.
And perhaps the most terrifying domain where this operates, where it becomes a literal matter of life and death, is in medicine.
Yeah, let's talk about the healthcare data.
We have robust studies analyzing patient-physician interactions. The findings show that when a patient with a non-native accent goes in for a consultation, the quality of care dramatically drops compared to an equivalent patient with a native accent.
Let's really picture this for a second. You are sitting in an exam room, the crinkly paper on the bed, the sterile smell, you're scared, you have a concerning symptom.
It's a vulnerable moment.
Super vulnerable. English might be your second or third language, so you have a heavy accent, but you are fluent. You start explaining your pain to the doctor. What is actually happening in the doctor's brain?
The doctor's brain is experiencing cognitive load. The doctor is likely busy, stressed, and pressed for time.
As doctors usually are.
Right. The unfamiliar accent requires them to expend extra mental energy to listen. Instead of leaning in and doing that work, the bias takes over. The studies reveal that these doctors ask fewer follow-up questions to accented patients.
Fewer questions.
Yes. They provide less detailed information about treatment options. And they physically spend less time in the room. The overall consultation times are measurably shorter.
So because of the rhythm of your vowels, the doctor is subconsciously rushing you out the door.
Without even realizing they're doing it.
And it's critical to point out that these studies control for language comprehension. This isn't a case of the doctor fundamentally not understanding the English words the patient is using.
No, the patient is speaking clearly.
Right. It's that the doctor's brain is taking the patient's self-reporting less seriously. They're dismissing the data because of the font it's printed in.
Which leads to misdiagnoses, delayed treatments, and severe health disparities.
It's tragic.
It is. And the exact same mechanism infects the legal system.
Right. The mock juror studies.
Yes. Researchers set up mock trials where jurors listen to witness testimony. The transcripts of the testimony are identical.
Word for word.
Word for word. But when the witness delivers the testimony with a non-native accent, the jurors consistently rate them as less credible, less reliable, and less trustworthy than native-speaking witnesses.
So you are on the stand, under oath, testifying to what you saw with your own 2 eyes, and the jury is subconsciously deciding you are a liar, or at least confused, just because of your paralinguistic signals?
That's the reality. And then if you zoom out from these high-stakes environments, like courtrooms and hospitals, to just everyday social contexts.
The day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. In corporate meetings, accented speakers are interrupted far more frequently. They often have their ideas ignored, only to have the exact same idea praised when repeated by a native-speaking colleague 10 minutes later.
I've seen that happen.
We all have. They are slowly, methodically excluded from casual social exchanges. It is 1,000 tiny paper cuts of exclusion every single time.
Okay, hang on. I need to challenge something here.
Go for it.
We've been leaning heavily on this idea of cognitive load. The brain struggling with the unfamiliarity of the Lego bricks. But as an American born in the Midwest, a British accent from London is technically unfamiliar to my ears. A Swahili accented English is also unfamiliar.
Oh, if they're non-native.
Right. Yet if someone walks into an American boardroom with a posh British accent, people fawn over them. They assume the person is brilliant. Why doesn't cognitive load penalize the British speaker? That evolutionary logic seems totally inconsistent.
That is the exact right question to ask, and it exposes the darker sociological reality of this bias. It brings us to what researchers call the double unfamiliarity effect.
The double unfamiliarity effect. Okay, unpack that.
You are entirely correct. Both the British accent and the Swahili accent are non-native, unfamiliar phonetic patterns to the American ear. They both require extra cognitive load to process.
Right.
But they produce wildly different assessments.
Why? If the brain is working harder for both, why does one get a pass?
Because bias is not just a function of mechanical familiarity. It is heavily, inextricably dictated by social status associations.
Ah, social status.
Yes. While cognitive load makes the brain susceptible to making a judgment, society tells the brain which judgment to make.
So society programs the software.
Exactly. A British accent, specifically a certain type of wealthy British accent, produces a halo effect in many American contexts. Our media, our history, and our cultural narratives have trained the American brain to associate that specific sound with sophistication, high education, and upper-class status.
Think about every movie villain who is a genius. They always have a British accent.
Precisely. So the brain still notices the difference. The software still flags the speaker as an outgroup member, but it tags it as a superior outgroup.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The determining factor is the perceived status of the country, the region, or the community associated with that accent. Accents tied to countries or groups perceived as high status, wealthy, or culturally dominant receive positive bias, despite being unfamiliar.
And the reverse.
Accents tied to groups perceived as lower status, developing, or marginalized receive punishing negative bias.
Meaning a French accented English speaker walking into a job interview in New York faces an entirely different reality than a Mexican accented English speaker in the same city.
Completely different.
The brain isn't evaluating intelligibility at all then. It's evaluating social hierarchy. It's using the voice as a proxy for race, class, and national origin.
It's a status radar, not an intelligibility radar.
If that's the case, if bias is driven by social status rather than how hard the brain has to work, who gets to decide which accents are high status?
And that's the big question.
Right. I mean, who crowns certain ways of speaking as the proper way? This brings us face to face with the whole illusion of prestige accents.
The concept of prestige accents is fascinating because it reveals how constructed our reality is.
Constructed how?
Well, every society in every language develops an accent that it formally labels as standard, correct, or prestigious. But that label is never, ever value neutral. It is not handed down from a linguistic mountaintop.
It doesn't just naturally happen.
No. The prestige accent is always, without exception, the accent of the specific group holding social, economic, and political power at a given historical moment.
Okay, let's look at the UK, because their prestige accent is practically a global brand. It's called received pronunciation, or RP. The classic Oxford, BBC, aristocratic sound.
Yes, very recognizable.
When did that actually become the undisputed proper way to speak English? Was it always that way?
Not at all. Language is always evolving. Received pronunciation really consolidated its power in the 18th and 19th centuries. As the British upper class cemented its social and economic dominance, they began to highly codify their specific regional and class-based way of speaking.
Like setting rules for it.
Exactly. It became a password. It was heavily promoted through elite, exclusive educational institutions like Eton and Oxford.
So it was a way for the wealthy to instantly identify each other and essentially lock out the working class.
Yes. And then the ultimate institutionalization happened in 1922 with the founding of the BBC.
Oh, because radio changes everything.
It completely altered the landscape. Before radio, most people lived relatively localized lives and only heard the accents of their immediate region. Suddenly, A box in the living room is projecting one highly specific aristocratic accent into every single home in the nation.
Wow, yeah.
The BBC mandated RP for its broadcasters. By doing so, it subconsciously cemented that specific sound in the minds of millions as the voice of the news, the voice of authority, the voice of truth.
While simultaneously signaling that regional accents, like a Yorkshire accent, a Scouse accent from Liverpool, a working-class London accent, were somehow inherently less serious, less intelligent, and unsuited for authority.
Exactly. And we see an almost identical pattern in the United States, just with different historical actors. The prestige accent in the U.S. is broadly known as General American.
Right, it's that flat, relatively unregionalized sound, the network news anchor voice.
Yes. It's heavily associated with educated, predominantly white, middle to upper class speech from the Midwest and the coasts. It became the default standard for national broadcasting, for corporate leadership, and for political viability.
But, and I need to be absolutely crystal clear on this, linguistically speaking, mechanically speaking, the general American accent or the British received pronunciation, they aren't actually superior, right?
No, absolutely not.
They don't convey information faster or more accurately than other accents.
That is the core illusion that must be shattered. Linguistically, phonologically, grammatically, there is absolutely no reason to prefer received pronunciation over a Geordie accent from Newcastle.
Right.
There is no objective scientific measure by which General American is better, clearer, or more efficient at conveying data than Southern American English or African American Vernacular English or Nigerian accented English.
None at all.
None. Every single one of these is a complete, complex, rule-bound linguistic system perfectly capable of expressing the highest heights of human thought.
So the idea that someone sounds unprofessional just because they sound Southern or uneducated because they speak AAVE is a complete fiction. It's a closed loop.
It is a perfect, self-sustaining closed loop of social reinforcement. The prestige accent is prestigious only because powerful people speak it. And powerful people speak it because it signifies their power to others.
Wow.
Accent bias is, at its root, a mechanism to reproduce and justify existing social hierarchies. It's a convenient way of using voice to sort people into socioeconomic categories that have absolutely nothing to do with their actual intelligence, capability, or character.
That is a staggering realization. You have this completely arbitrary, socially constructed standard of proper speech that acts as a gatekeeper to success, wealth, and influence.
It is a massive gatekeeper.
And that brutal reality forces a massive portion of the population to adapt just to survive in professional environments. Which brings us to the incredible skill and the agonizing hidden toll of code switching.
Ah, yes, code switching. It is arguably one of the most sophisticated high-wire linguistic skills a human being can perform.
Let's define it real quick for anyone who isn't familiar.
Broadly defined, code switching is the ability to move fluently back and forth between your native community speech, the organic way you talk at home, with your family, in your neighborhood, and a standard prestige professional register.
Okay, now I can hear a skeptical listener pushing back on this right now. They might be thinking, look, isn't that just basic adaptability? We all wear different hats. I don't talk to my CEO the same way I talk to my buddies at a sports bar. I use different slang. Why is this specifically viewed as so harmful?
It's a very common pushback, and it's important to address because it completely misses the depth of what is actually happening.
How so?
Yes, everyone adjusts their level of formality based on the context. But code switching, particularly for individuals navigating away from marginalized regional accents, minority dialects, or non-native accents, involves severe unseen costs that the dominant group never experiences.
Walk me through those costs. What is actually happening to the person doing the switching?
First, there is the massive cognitive demand. Remember the cognitive load theory we discussed earlier, where the brain burns extra calories trying to process unfamiliar sounds?
Yes, the heavy lifting.
When you are code switching, you are inflicting a massive cognitive load on yourself. You are exerting sustained, hypervigilant attention to monitor your own output in real time.
Monitoring every word.
You are actively suppressing your natural vowel shapes, adjusting your sentence structure, and filtering your vocabulary second by second, while simultaneously trying to do your actual job.
Yeah.
You are doing manually what native standard speakers get to do on autopilot.
So you're running a mental marathon while everyone else is just taking a casual stroll just to appear like you're all moving at the same pace.
Exactly.
You are burning immense intellectual fuel just to sound acceptable, fuel that you could otherwise be using to solve the complex problems in the meeting.
Exactly. And the sheer exhaustion of that is profound.
Yeah.
But the second cost is perhaps even more deeply damaging, and that is the identity strain.
Identity strain.
Yes. This creates a profound, lingering sense of what researchers call self-concealment.
Self-concealment, that sounds heavy.
It is. It is the constant underlying psychological pressure of knowing that who you are at home, your authentic, unedited self, is linguistically incompatible with who you are allowed to be in the professional world.
You are essentially being told by society every single day you walk into the office, the way you naturally exist is unprofessional. Leave that person at the door.
And for non-native English speakers migrating to Western corporate environments, this strain is incredibly acute. The non-native speaker who succeeds often have to develop an entirely separate professional persona.
Like a work alter ego.
Right, one that is highly controlled, rigorously accent neutralized, and formally appropriate. The emotional and social investment required to build and maintain that separate identity, to constantly suppress the voice of your homeland and your heritage, takes an enormous psychological toll. You are severing a connection to your own history for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Okay, so we've mapped the entire battlefield here. We understand the evolutionary glitch, the cognitive load, the horrific real-world consequences, the illusion of prestige, and the exhausting toll of code switching.
That's a lot to process.
It is. But we can't just leave you, the listener, sitting there with all this heavy reality and no way out. How do we navigate this? Better yet, how do we dismantle it?
We need solutions.
Let's start with the immediate, actionable strategies for the speakers themselves, the people walking into the room with a non-native or non-prestige accent. What is the smartest play?
The first and most vital strategy highlighted in the research might actually seem counterintuitive to a lot of people.
What is it?
Prioritize clarity over accent reduction.
Meaning, don't spend thousands of hours trying to erase the accent entirely.
Precisely. Trying to completely eliminate a native accent in adulthood is an agonizingly laborious, often demoralizing, and frequently counterproductive project. The goal should not be to sound like a Midwestern news anchor. Instead, the focus should be purely on reducing the listener's cognitive load.
Okay, but how do you do that if you still have the accent?
You do it by managing the flow of the information. You slow down your pace slightly. You articulate your consonants more deliberately. You lean on clear, familiar vocabulary rather than complex idioms.
Let me see.
If you make it mechanically easier for the listener's brain to process the Lego bricks, you eliminate that disfluency penalty. Once their brain isn't struggling to hear the words, the brilliant substance of your ideas can actually take center stage.
Going back to our analogy, you don't need to change the smudged font to Times New Roman. You just need to increase the font size and double space the lines so it's easier to read.
That's exactly it. The second strategy involves preparation and aggressive competence demonstration. We know the bias hits hard and fast in the first 10 seconds.
Right.
So a speaker needs to anchor a positive first impression before the biological bias has a chance to fully settle in and build its walls.
How do you beat the clock on a 10-second judgment, though?
By leading with undeniable, irrefutable expertise. You don't ease into the conversation. You open with a brief, confident credentialing statement. You make a specific reference to your relevant past experience, or you open with a highly structured, unassailable piece of data.
Setting the tone immediately.
Exactly. You force the listener's brain to accept a prior expectation of high competence. Once that anchor is set, the listener's brain has to reckon with it, making it much harder for the negative accent bias to hijack the narrative.
I love this next strategy because it leverages a different biological hack. Narrative over assertion, using the power of storytelling.
Yes. Telling a compelling story creates a phenomenon that neuroscientists call neural coupling.
Okay, explain neural coupling. What is happening in the brain?
When someone is simply stating facts or arguing a point, the listener's brain is in an evaluative, critical state. It is judging the information and judging the speaker.
Right, their guard is up.
But when you tell a story, when you introduce a character, a setting, a conflict, the listener's brain physically shifts. It begins to mirror the brain activity of the storyteller. Their brainwaves literally synchronize with yours.
So instead of the listener sitting back with their arms folded, judging your vowels, they are suddenly inside the narrative with you.
They are journeying with you. A narrative completely bypasses the evaluative, critical defenses where accent bias lives. The listener gets caught up in anticipating what happens next, and the social assessment of the accent is overridden by the ancient human love of a story.
And the final strategy for the speaker is just owning the elephant in the room, acknowledging the accent right out of the gate.
This is a tremendously powerful psychological move. Briefly and confidently acknowledging it, smiling and saying something like, "As you can hear, English is my third language, so I'm to speak deliberately today to ensure absolute clarity," accomplishes two massive things.
First, it projects a crazy amount of confidence. It shows you aren't hiding anything.
Yes, the self-awareness commands instant respect. But second, and more importantly for the neuroscience, it removes the unexpected signal the listener's brain is frantically trying to process.
Closing the loop.
Exactly. When you walk in with a different accent, the listener's brain is subconsciously spinning its wheels, trying to categorize you. Where is he from? What is that accent? By naming it immediately, you answer the subconscious question. You close that mental loop for them, which frees up their cognitive load to just sit back and listen to your words.
But if we step back and look at the whole board, I mean, it shouldn't just be on the marginalized speakers to constantly adapt, code switch, and manage the room's psychology.
No, absolutely not.
That's exhausting and unjust. What can the rest of us do? What can organizations, companies, and native-speaking listeners do to fix their own broken radar?
The institutional fixes are where we can generate real systemic change. First, organizations must implement highly structured evaluation criteria. If you are conducting a job interview or a performance review, you cannot just go off a general vibe or a gut feeling because your gut feeling is heavily polluted by paralinguistic bias.
You need a scorecard.
You need explicit, specific metrics. Did this candidate demonstrate leadership in this specific scenario? Did this candidate accurately solve the technical problem?
Breaking it down into parts.
Yes. When you force evaluators to rate performance on specific, granular criteria separately, it mathematically prevents that initial 10-second negative impression from sweeping over and ruining the entire evaluation. It breaks the confirmation bias.
Second is targeted awareness training. And I know bias training gets a lot of eye rolls, but the data here is actually very encouraging, isn't it?
It is. The research shows that simply knowing this specific cognitive load bias exists, understanding the exact mechanics of the smudged font illusion, activates a more deliberate, conscious evaluation process in the brain.
Just being aware helps.
Exactly. When you know your brain is prone to a specific mechanical error, you can actively catch yourself making it. You can pause and ask yourself, am I disagreeing with this person because their idea is bad or because their cadence is unfamiliar?
And what about blind evaluations?
They are incredibly effective. Wherever possible, removing the voice entirely removes the trigger. We've seen this revolutionize symphony orchestras when they started holding auditions behind screens.
Oh, yeah.
For corporate environments, this means anonymized work samples, written technical tests, or evaluating the code before you meet the coder. If you don't strictly need to hear the person's voice to evaluate the quality of their work, don't let the voice infect the process.
And then there's the long game, the ultimate structural fix.
Diverse representation in positions of authority. This takes time, but it is the most permanent solution. When an organization promotes leaders who speak with non-prestige, regional, or non-native accents, it provides constant daily exposure.
Rewiring the brain over time.
Exactly. Over time, that exposure to competent, authoritative speakers gradually recalibrates everyone's baseline associations. The brain slowly learns a new pattern. It stops associating authority exclusively with the general American news anchor and starts associating it with the Nigerian executive or the Southern project manager.
Zooming out even further from the immediate workplace, let's look at the grand trajectory of the English language itself. Because the demographic reality of the world right now is shifting massively, and the whole concept of a native standard is becoming mathematically obsolete.
It is one of the most profound demographic shifts in linguistic history. As of right now, more people on this planet speak English as a second, third, or fourth language than as a first language. The non-native speakers have vastly outnumbered the native speakers.
Which means English belongs to its users, all of its users. The center of gravity is gone. English doesn't exclusively belong to the people born in London or Boston or Ohio anymore. It belongs to the coder in Bangalore, the diplomat in Nairobi, and the scientist in Beijing just as much as anyone else.
Exactly. And the crucial realization that is beginning to slowly permeate the global corporate landscape is that accent and capability are entirely orthogonal.
Orthogonal, unrelated.
They are completely independent variables that do not affect each other. A Nigerian accented surgeon's surgical skills are not hindered by their accent. A Chinese accented physicist understands the laws of thermodynamics perfectly. If an American or British listener assumes otherwise, the speaker isn't the one who is broken.
The listener's receiver is broken.
Yes. And as the global economy becomes increasingly interconnected, The very nature of what we consider prestige is shifting. Multilingual fluency is rapidly becoming more advantageous than monolingual perfection. The cognitive flexibility to navigate multiple cultures, to bridge diverse markets, even if it means speaking three different languages with a slight accent in two of them, that is becoming the true marker of global sophistication.
It's completely replacing the outdated insular model, where speaking one language perfectly with the exact right vowels was the ultimate goal.
The linguistic diversity that generates bias in a narrow traditional context is increasingly becoming a genuine, undeniable competitive advantage on the global stage.
I want to leave you listening with a thought that really grounded this whole exploration for me. It's a reminder of what an accent truly represents. When you strip away the evolutionary glitches, the societal status games, and the corporate ladders, what is a voice?
It's a history.
Exactly. Your accent is the sound of your entire life in language. Every community you've belonged to, every country you've lived in, every person who took the time to teach you a new word. It is all layered into the acoustics of your voice. That is not a deficiency. That is a rich, lived history.
In a rapidly globalizing, interconnected world, understanding that history raises a final vital question for you to consider.
What's that?
If the future of global communication and human progress relies heavily on cross-cultural adaptability, cognitive flexibility, and the ability to bridge diverse networks, might the strictly monolingual speaker, armed with nothing but their perfect prestige accent, actually be the one operating at a severe disadvantage?
Wow. It really makes you think twice about what you're evaluating the next time you hear someone speak for those first 10 seconds.